Hi everybody, welcome back to BBC. I'm in the middle of, we just watched we did a nonviolent communication discussion this morning at the Abbey, which we have been doing for, I think, almost 2.5 years. I mean, for a consistent communication endeavor. And we keep going back to the videos and the workbooks and the books, and Zopa's been kindly facilitating us through this. And we have this very remarkable section this morning. I'm still chewing on it, so I'm just going to kind of put it out there as part of my process of understanding. Really the vastness of what nonviolent communication is offering to us, and the brilliance of Marshall Rosenberg. I just think he's amazing. But what I try to do with nonviolent communication is to try to see, how does it work with Dharma? Or how can I interface the language and the communication to have a life that's wonderful, to go along with the Dharma aspiration to be liberated and to be awakened in order to benefit all sentient beings. And this morning's little exchange, Marshall takes a participant in his workshops and kind of goes head to head with some of the things that are actually affecting that person personally in their lives, and trying to show them how to use nonviolent communication to transform the situation to one where people feel connected and people are getting their needs met. So I'm trying to find language here. So the way I'm looking at it right now is the whole idea about feelings and needs from nonviolent communication, that's really what we're looking for, however dysfunctional and tripping over ourselves, how poorly, how well we do that. I have been sort of meeting that up with the deepest wish of all sentient beings to be happy and not suffer. And that in both of those frameworks we go about this, due to the ignorance within our own minds, in some very difficult, painful, suffering, struggling sort of ways. And that without giving each other the time and the willingness, what we do, whether it's in community or in our family or at work or on the larger scale in Israel and Syria, is that the self-centered thought, or the jackal, keep us up on the surface, thinking that if we just swat the mosquitoes and talk badly about someone behind their back, or yell at them, or steal from them, or bomb them, that somehow our needs are going to be met. And that the self-centered thought, in my mind, is what's driving that jackal behavior. And so we spend all of our time up on the surface thinking that our needs are going to be met up there. Well, what Marsha was showing us today, and he keeps showing us, is that underneath that is this whole other deep well of where those needs and feelings actually do live. And as the Dharma, beyond the self-centered thought, underneath that is this deep wish to be happy and not suffer. And what he showed today was is that we think our needs are getting met when the self-centered thought gets its way. But what happens is that it's temporary, it's unsatisfactory, and in the end, we have to revisit it in another way. The self-centered thought was never going to be satisfied, nor is the jackal ever going to be satisfied. And you reconfigure this and try again in the same sort of deluded, moralistic, crazy way, because underneath that is this beautiful wish to benefit, this beautiful wish, as Marshall says, to connect, to really find the things that are wonderful in life. And what happened in this exchange was he so beautifully took on the part of the person who was not behaving, who had this little jackal story going on. And when he found the feeling and the need of autonomy to be able to choose and make wise decisions to support this person's life from his own side. And if we do that with each other, and it takes time, it takes willingness, it takes perseverance, it takes compassion, is that it's like everything just changed. I mean, the whole situation just transformed. And that after the feelings and the needs were sort of discovered between the person who was behaving badly and the frustrated employer who was trying to make them change, once Marshall helped to see that both of them had needs that could be metable, is that the language that we need to find that doesn't have any evaluations, any diagnosis, any judgment, any criticism, is that more often than not, both parties get what they need. And it might take time, it might need renegotiating, it might need a revisit, because the self-centered thought has been working the show, and the Jackal, which is, for me, is like the self-centered thought, I've been working the show since beginningless time. So to be able to hear what that voice sounds like, to know that when we're honest with ourselves, when that's what's in playing, is that we're not getting our needs met, maybe for a moment, and that to get underneath that, into our heart, into our minds, that truly wants to be happy and not suffer, and wishes that for the same for the other person. When I look at that, what's going on in my own mind, what I struggle with here in community, and when I look at the Israelis and the Arabs, and I look at the Syrians, and I look at the Tibetan people and the Chinese, we're all up here on the surface, jackaling and shooting at each other with our self-centered thought and our moralistic judgments, and none of the needs and the feelings are getting met or heard. So, sort of part of my little exploration in this in the next few weeks is to not only look at the way in which I never get where I think my needs are getting met, but they're not, is to take these things that are going on in the world, that have been going on in the world forever, and to try to put myself in other people's shoes and to find out what is the feeling and what is the need that's not getting met, and what would be the request. So between the Israelis and the Palestinians, between the Chinese and the Tibetans, between the Assad and the Syrian people, between Semke and a member of the community, between me and my family, between people who are working with their employers, is to try to put myself in other people's shoes just to get familiar with identifying the self-centered thought with this jackal voice and the voice of the sentient being underneath who just really wants to have a need met and wants to connect. And to just try to put myself in people's shoes and see if I can come up with what's underneath all of that barrage of missiles and, verbal bombs and things that we set on each other, and to try to figure out how to find the harmony, how to find the needs that are underneath those things. Because I think what will happen for me is that it'll help me get away from the personal distress that I'm starting to feel about what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Tibet, is that if I can go underneath the surface and find out what's the feelings and the needs of the sentient beings in these situations, I think it will grow my compassion and my understanding that I have those very same feelings and needs and requests too. And I think that'll help to grow the compassion that I want to have, rather than this sense of, I'm pissed off, angry, and I'm also sad. And to see if I can do that as part of my own self-exploration, to get familiar with what the difference is between the self-centered thought and the true wish to be happy and not suffer. So anyway, I'm going to go do some experimenting, and I'll let you know what happens.